Hello, this is Megan.
And this is Mark.
Welcome to our 19th video of the Startling Construction at Disneyland. Today is February 17th, 2018.
To start it off, a crawler crane is lifting a duct segment to be placed on top of the Millennium Falcon show building. This duct will be used as part of the HVAC system. HVAC is short for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Here it is being lowered to the top of the building. Workers are releasing the crane's belt from the duct. Here we are in Critter Country looking at the rock forms in the distance. And on this spire, a worker is welding mesh forms together. I'll zoom in. If we look to the left, a crawler crane is lifting a duct segment. This time, it's for the Battle Escape show building. And here it's being lowered. A worker is guiding the duct through the steel beams. Now we'll go on the Mark Twain riverboat. Between the trees, we can see part of a village area beam structure. I'll pause the picture right here. On this structure, we can see two curved beams. Let's go to the Star Wars line model and view what this area will look like once it's completed. Alright, here's the model. The curved beams on the structure will be used to create this cylindrical side structure. Very cool. Now over here between the trees, we can see the framework for a dome-shaped top structure. It has definitely changed since we saw it last. This is what the structure will look like once it's completely finished. Let's look at the structure from a different perspective. Let's go on the Matterhorn. And there it is. Next, we'll go on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and see it from that perspective. We have a pretty good view from this perspective. It's really coming along. Finally, we'll view it from Gadget's Go Coaster. It is looking nice.
Today is February 19th, 2018.
If you look at the rock arch in the distance, a worker is using a concrete pump hose to add concrete to the edge of the arch. Now the concrete is added, and Imagineer is putting shape and detail to it. He's putting detail and shape to this side of the arch as well. An Imagineer over here is carving the concrete to create detail and texture to this rock formation. Next, we'll peek through the fence at the tunnel entrance, the one that's closest to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. From this perspective, we can see that more scaffolding is in place. Also, if you look closely, you can see metal studs that have been brought in. Here's a couple stacks of them. These metal studs will be used primarily for the vertical framing of the building's walls. And not only will these studs be used to give shape to the buildings, they are also used to hold wall panels in place. Next, if we look a little bit to the right, we can see that some of the vertical metal studs have already been installed. Now we'll go ahead and peek through the fence at the tunnel entrance, the one that's closest to Fantasyland. Metal studs have been brought in on this side as well. Also notice that stairs have been put in place since we saw it last. Next, what we'll do is go to the Mickey and Friends parking structure. Workers are fastening beams together. This worker is putting a bolt through a bolt hole. Now he's adding a nut to the end of the bolt. Sliding to the left, workers are installing stair railings to the side of the Battle Escape show building. Here a telehandler is lifting a railing to the workers. And the workers are putting it into place.
Today is February 24th, 2018.
More mesh forms are being installed on top of the Battle Escape show building. Here's one being lowered to its location. They're lining it up with other forms. The worker on the right is attaching the forms. Now he's welding the forms together. If we look to the side of the Battle Escape, a worker is welding a staircase railing. Next, if we slide to the right, a worker is welding beams together. Looking at this area, we can see that steel decking is in the process of being laid out. Notice that the beams around the decking have different colors. There are gray and red beams. Basically, the red beams are made to resist rusting. This is accomplished by coating the steel with iron oxide, which will create a barrier to prevent water from having contact with the beam. Also, adding iron oxide gives the steel its unique red color. And this red iron will be the primary support columns and beams of the structure, while the gray color beams will be used for some of the internal and cross-bracing framework. Below this framework on the ground level are two doors that will be used to enter or exit the side building of the Battle Escape. Let's take a look back at the creation of the sidewall where the doors are. This picture was taken on April 28, 2017. From this picture, notice that the concrete forms are in place to create a wall for the Battle Escape side building. Notice that in the middle of the picture, two concrete forms are in place to create the doors. And both of these doors lead to where the rock cavity will be. Megan and I find this interesting that no doors have been made to connect the side building to the main show building of the Battle Escape. Here's a picture of the rock cavity on the model. The two doors will be located about here. And notice on the other side of the rock cavity is the blue and white spacecraft. And many people have asked us, is it possible that the blue and white spacecraft be the actual entrance to the Battle Escape? And our answer is yes. To us, this makes perfect sense, and I'll explain why. First of all, notice the location of the spacecraft. The back end is pressed up against the rock formations. And on the other side of the rock is the exact location of the cylindrical structure. Also notice that the spacecraft isn't elevated. The hull of the spacecraft is resting on the ground. This will allow easy access inside. And Megan and I believe that once you enter the spacecraft, you will sit in a pod similar to Star Tours with a video screen in front to view the location of the craft. Once the ride begins, it is possible that the pod inside the spacecraft will be transferred to the cylindrical structure. And Megan has created a drawing and animation to demonstrate this. We'll look at that next. This drawing is a cross-section of the area looking from above, illustrating how the inner pod of the spacecraft could possibly be transferred and rotated within the show building. This blue area represents the spacecraft under the rock cavity. The gray circle is the cylindrical structure, and the light gray section below is the docking bay. We feel that guests will come out of the side building of the Battle Escape and enter the pod inside the spacecraft. The black dots represent the guests inside the pod. Once the ride begins, the pod will be transferred to the cylindrical structure and rotate. However, if this scenario is correct, more than likely there'll be multiple pods within the cylindrical structure. We're using 3 as an example, but there could be more. Alright, at this point, an empty pod could be put into the spacecraft to load passengers, while the previous pod continues on the adventure. It is possible that most of the motion will be on the left side of the structure to allow for more vertical movements, since the left side of the structure is taller, as we can see here. It would be cool if this part of the ride, if the spacecraft leaves the planet back 2, and after leaving is intercepted by a Star Destroyer. The Star Destroyer then transports the spacecraft to the docking bay. That would be awesome. The pod then rotates and enters a hull of a spacecraft that looks exactly the same as the outer hull of the spacecraft located under the rock cavity. At this point, all of the passengers will exit the spacecraft into the docking bay. And this docking bay will be the internal queue of the attraction. If we compare this flow to another attraction in Disneyland, I would say that it mostly resembles the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion has 2 queues. An external queue, which is located on the outside, and the internal queue, which is located after the stretching room before boarding the ride vehicle. Now looking at this picture, the metal casing that was placed inside the Battle Escape side building indicates that it is being placed into the external queue. Another theory is that once all the large equipment is put into the show building, another side building will be built, and this opening on the side will be modified as the entrance. After the attraction opens and we find out that all these theories are wrong, Megan and I will probably have a good laugh looking back at these videos. Although it's fun to speculate and try to figure out the flow of the attraction. If anyone watching has a theory of their own, we would love to hear it. Alright, now if we look on top of the Battle Escape, more mesh forms are being added for additional rock work. The forms are being welded into place. Sliding to the left, a crawler crane is lifting Millennium Falcon hallway segments. These segments are the same type as we saw being lifted a couple weeks ago. Here's what these segments will look like once they're installed. They're being lowered into one of the top openings of the Millennium Falcon show building. Next, other Millennium Falcon segments are being lifted. These are a little harder to make out. They might be segment pieces where the hallway changes direction. Now notice the hole on the top of this piece. It's possible that it's a hole for one of these lights. Here it's being lowered into the building. Next, some more hallway segments are being lifted and being lowered into the show building as well. Well, that's a taste of things to come.
We can't wait to see what they build next.